All right, let's dive into Fair Play issue #20.
Yeah, this one's from 97.
It takes us to Dallas for not one, but two JFK conferences happening at the same time,
You've got JFK Lancer and Copa.
each with their own, ways of looking at the assassination.
Right, different approaches to uncovering the truth.
And this issue of Fair Play kind of bridges the gap between those two.
Yeah, it gives us a glimpse into the key figures, the arguments, and some newly released documents.
We'll be looking at everything from, conflicting accounts from the Parkland doctors to
The mysteries surrounding Lee Harvey Oswald.
even some international perspectives on the assassination.
Lots to unpack, so
Yeah, where should we start?
maybe we could start with the atmosphere in Dallas during those conferences. Fair Play talks about a real sense of excitement,
Anticipation.
but also this underlying tension between the different factions in the research community
So it's kind of like on one hand, you have these two distinct groups, JFK Lancer and Copa,
with their own interpretations.
but then there's this call for unity.
Yeah. There was a feeling that even with all the disagreements, the community was stronger together.
Okay.
And a key figure in that was Carrie McCarthy.
JFK's cousin.
She was a keynote speaker at the Lancer Conference.
So what was her message? How did it go over?
Well, she talked about the importance of remembering JFK, not just as a president, but as a human being.
A husband, a father.
Right, a brother.
It kind of brings it back to the personal impact, right?
Exactly.
Beyond just the politics.
And it wasn't just Carrie's speech. There was also a visit to Officer J.D. Tippett's grave,
Oh, wow.
led by a retired officer who actually knew Tippett.
Really?
Yeah, it's a pretty powerful moment.
I bet.
Really brings home the human cost of that day in Dallas.
So it's not just the analytical side of the research, but also the emotional weight of it all.
Yeah, and I think Fair Play captures that balance really well.
Right. Which is important, I think, for any historical inquiry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially one as complex and as sensitive as the JFK assassination.
Now, we can't talk about the assassination without addressing
The disagreements,
the debates.
of course.
And Fair Play mentions that the single bullet theory was a major point of contention.
Yeah, you've got Jim Mars. He wrote Crossfire.
Right, right.
He presents a pretty strong argument against the single bullet theory in this issue.
What's his take?
Well, he basically says if the single bullet theory falls apart, then the whole lone gunman theory doesn't hold up.
Bold statement.
And then there's the whole debate about amnesty.
Yeah, Misty.
Yeah, should it be offered to those potentially involved in exchange for the truth?
Oh, wow. So
There were some who felt it was the only way to get to the bottom of what happened.
others who argued that justice had to come first.
Right, so it becomes a question of, truth versus justice.
It's a tough one. I mean, is that kind of the core of JFK research? What's the purpose? Is it justice or is it truth, even if that means some people never face consequences?
It's a question that the research community has been wrestling with from the very beginning.
And I don't think there's an easy answer.
No, not at all.
Now, Fair Play also delves into the accounts from those Parkland doctors, and there seem to be,
Some inconsistencies.
yeah, what's going on there?
Well, the issue focuses on Dr. Robert McClellan's sketch of the head wound,
Drawn from memory.
which caused quite a stir, Some doctors, like Dr. Perry, weren't so sure about the sketch's accuracy, but others stuck to their descriptions of a large wound in the back of the head, like McClellan drew it.
So disagreement about the wounds themselves and also about the reliability of the evidence.
Yeah, and then you had the bullet hole in Governor Connolly's coat.
Right.
Photos show it in the sleeve, which doesn't really line up with the single bullet theory.
So we've got conveying accounts from doctors and then physical evidence that seems to challenge the official story.
It definitely raises more questions than it answers.
And speaking of complicated, let's talk about Lee Harvey Oswald himself.
Yeah, the man of mystery.
Fair Play explores a bunch of theories about him, some more out there than others.
You've got everything from, was he an FBI informant, to was he set up?
Was his mail being watched?
Some even suggest he could have been impersonated by intelligence agencies.
Impersonated? Hold on, what's that about?
Well, one theory suggests there was a whole program using lookalikes.
And that Oswald might have been part of a larger intelligence operation.
Right, and when you think about the mysteries around his travels, his activities, the possibility of his mail being intercepted, it's not so far-fetched.
So many questions, so many potential connections. It's
a lot to process.
Yeah, but fascinating.
And we're just getting started. There's also this guy, Harry Holmes, an eyewitness, who claims he saw the assassination through binoculars.
Through binoculars.
Adds another layer to the whole story, doesn't it?
It's like every new detail just opens up more questions instead of giving us answers.
And that's what makes this research so compelling. The more you dig, the more you realize how much we still don't know about that day in Dallas.
Okay, so on top of all that, fair play issue, #20, includes some newly released documents.
From the Assassination Records Review Board.
Right, the ARB, weren't they supposed to release all these,
Previously classified documents?
Yeah. So what did they find? Anything interesting?
Well, there's this one detail about a mysterious phone call to a rifle range in Dallas right after the assassination. But the thing is, the document mentioning this call, it's incomplete.
What do you mean incomplete?
The second page is missing.
Missing? What happened to it?
That's the question, isn't it?
Is that like a common thing with these documents?
Fair Play mentions that it's not an isolated incident. A lot of documents from the ARB are missing pages. Sometimes entire documents are just gone.
So what information might be on those missing pages? And why are they missing?
Those are questions researchers are still trying to figure out.
All right, well, let's focus on the documents that we do have. What do they tell us?
One document details Oswald's trip to Mexico City a few weeks before the assassination.
Right, I remember reading about that.
It confirms that he visited the Soviet and Cuban embassies looking for visas.
But there were also those reports of him acting strange, maybe even being impersonated during that trip.
Which, if you think about it, gives more weight to that whole look-alike theory, right?
It does.
I mean, especially if Oswald is part of some intelligence operation where deception would be like standard procedure.
Right, missing documents, possible impersonators, trips to foreign embassies. It's like
a spy thriller.
And then there's the possibility that his mail was being monitored.
Oh, yeah. Fair Play talks about this CIA program.
A program.
It was a mail intercept program, highly classified, went on for years.
Targeting mail.
Yeah. Mail to and from the Soviet Union and the U.S. They were even opening letters, reading the contents.
That's a...
Pretty wild, right?
Wow, so was Oswald's mail targeted?
That's what researchers are trying to determine. And Fair Play raises an interesting point. Oswald ordered the rifle through the mail.
The rifle he allegedly used.
Right. So if his mail was being intercepted, the FBI would have known about the weapon.
That raises a lot of questions about the FBI's role in all of this.
Yeah, like why wouldn't they have intervened if they knew?
Was there a cover-up?
And it brings us back to that question. Lone wolf or pawn in a bigger game?
All these missing pieces, these revelations, it's enough to make anyone question the official story.
And that's the point of deep dives like this, right? Peeling back the layers, confronting the uncomfortable truths about power and secrecy, coming to terms with the fact that we may never have all the answers.
This has been incredible so far, and we've only just scratched the surface of Fair Play issue #20.
There's a lot more to come.
What can we expect as we continue this deep dive?
Well, in part 2, we're going to take a closer look at those newly released documents and explore some of the, shall we say, more fringe theories about Lee Harvey Oswald.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
We'll also look at the international reaction to the assassination, which adds a whole new dimension to the event.
I'm on the edge of my seat. Can't wait to see what other mysteries we uncover.
Stay tuned.
Until next time, keep those thinking caps on.
So we're back, diving deeper into Fair Play issue #20.
And last time, we were talking about those missing documents and the whole idea of Oswald impersonators.
And I think there's more to uncover there with those newly released files.
Let's get into it then. What else is in there?
Well, there's this researcher, Jack White, who makes a pretty interesting case for multiple Oswalds.
Multiple Oswalds. What, like clones or something?
Not quite. He's suggesting that different people might have been posing as Oswald at different times.
Okay, so how does he back that up?
He points to the photographs, inconsistencies in how Oswald looks in different pictures.
Like what?
Well, there are differences in height, build, even facial features, things that are hard to explain away as just bad photography or lighting.
So are you saying some of the photos we've seen might not actually be the Lee Harvey Oswald?
It's a possibility, and it ties into those reports of Oswald acting strangely in Mexico City, almost like he wasn't himself.
So it's like we're looking at a hall of mirrors here.
Yeah, exactly. Distorted reflections, shifting identities.
Makes you wonder what's real and what's not.
And it definitely adds another layer to the whole Oswald mystery. Was he really alone in all of this, or was he a part of something much bigger, like a pawn in some kind of elaborate game?
Going back to those missing documents, do you think there could be a connection between those missing pages and these potential impersonators?
I don't know, maybe. I mean, it's possible those missing pieces could tell us more about Oswald's involvement, if any, in an intelligence operation.
It's frustrating, isn't it? These gaps in the historical record.
It's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
But it also makes you want to dig deeper, figure out what's missing.
Exactly. And we have to remember, this is just one theory among many.
Right. Fair play lays out a whole spectrum of ideas about Oswald.
Some folks believe he was an FBI informant. Others think he was set up to take the fall.
It's a lot to process. Each theory adds another piece to the puzzle.
And speaking of adding pieces, how about we talk about the international reaction to the assassination? Fair Play has some interesting insights on that.
Yeah, good point. It wasn't just an American tragedy, was it? This was a global event.
Right, and Fair Play includes some quotes from foreign press expressing shock, you know,
Disbelief.
even suspicion towards the
I
U.S.
bet that didn't help America's image abroad.
Not at all. And there was one quote from a Czechoslovakia newspaper that really stood out.
What did it say?
It mentioned rumors about the FBI and CIA being involved in the assassination.
Wow. And this is during the Cold War, right?
Yeah, deep mistrust between the U.S. and the Soviet bloc.
Having accusations like that coming from behind the Iron Curtain must have been pretty unsettling for the U.S. government.
It certainly fueled conspiracy theories on a global scale.
It's like the assassination became this breeding ground for speculation about hidden agendas and shadowy figures pulling the strings.
Exactly. So you see, the JFK assassination wasn't just a national tragedy. It was this international incident that, played into those Cold War tensions.
And probably sowed a lot of distrust around the world.
Absolutely. It shows how events like this don't happen in isolation. They're influenced by, and in turn influence, the whole geopolitical landscape.
Right. It's a reminder that history is never simple. It's about connections, ripple effects.
And with the JFK assassination, those ripples are still being felt today as researchers worldwide try to put the pieces together and figure out what really happened in Dallas.
We've covered a lot, but Fair Play still has more to offer.
Oh yeah, we're just getting started.
What can we expect in the final part of our exploration?
I'm thinking we take a closer look at the personal stories in this issue. Hear from researchers like Mary Farrell, who's dedicated her life to unraveling the mysteries of the assassination.
Okay, so more of the human side of this historical event.
Right. We'll also look at the ongoing debate between different factions within the research community, how they're trying to find common ground in their search for truth.
Sounds good to me. So we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Fair Play issue #20.
And this time, I think we should focus on the human side of this whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. We've been talking about the facts, the theories, all that.
But this is ultimately a story about people.
Real people whose lives were changed forever by what happened in Dallas.
And Fair Play really captures that, the personal stories, the moments of reflection.
We talked about Carrie McCarthy's speech.
About remembering JFK as a human being.
Right, and that theme comes up again and again throughout the issue.
Like with the visit to Officer J.D. Tippett's grave.
Yeah, that was powerful. Really brought it home for me.
The officer leading the visit, he actually knew Tippett personally.
Really?
Yeah, it was more than just a historical event for him. It was a personal loss.
It's easy to get caught up in the research, the analysis,
Right.
But then you have those moments that remind you of the human cost of it all.
And it's not just about the victims, it's about the researchers too.
The people who've dedicated their lives to uncovering the truth.
Fair Play gives us a glimpse into their passion, their dedication, and sometimes their frustration.
Trying to navigate this incredibly complex case.
And speaking of researchers, this issue features a keynote address from Mary Farrell.
Oh, wow. She's like a legend in the JFK community, isn't she?
Yeah, she's been collecting and analyzing documents for decades.
Long before the internet made it easy.
Exactly. And her speech focused on the importance of collaboration, shared knowledge within the research community.
It sounds like she saw these conferences as opportunities for researchers to come together.
To share their findings, support each other in their search for truth.
She's kind of like the glue holding this whole community together.
Yeah, she really embodies that spirit of dedication and perseverance.
It's inspiring to see that level of commitment, especially given the challenges they face.
Especially given how long this has been going on.
And Fair Play doesn't shy away from those challenges, does it? It mentions the tension between the two conferences, Lancer and Copa.
There were definitely calls for unity.
Right, I remember that.
One speaker, Vincent Palomara, he talked about a future where there would be one unified conference.
No more competition, just collaboration.
Right, because at the end of the day, they all want the same thing.
To find out what happened to JFK.
But of course, putting that into practice is easier said than done.
Yeah, strong personalities, different methods. It's bound to create some friction.
It's like a family. You love each other, but you don't always agree.
Exactly. But despite the disagreements, there's that shared passion, that belief that the truth is out there.
And that's what keeps them going.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into fair play issue, #20, what's the main thing you take away from all of this?
For me, it's that history is, uh, it's not static. It's not just about facts and dates.
Right.
It's about interpretation, perspective, and the ongoing search for meaning.
Like a conversation that never ends.
Exactly. There are always new voices to be heard, new perspectives to consider, new pieces of the puzzle to find.
And that's what makes the JFK assassination so fascinating, isn't it?
It's a mystery that keeps challenging us, keeps intriguing us.
Reminding us that the past is never truly settled.
Yeah, well said.
So, for our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep exploring this, a complex, fascinating event.
Read the books, study the documents, listen to the different voices, and come to your own conclusions.
Because ultimately, the search for truth is something we all share.
And the more we talked about it, the more we discuss it, the closer we get to understanding what really happened in Dallas.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into fair play issue #20. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep that spirit of truth alive.